All right, we are going to get started. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Exciting to talk to you all. Excited to kick off our webinar series. I'm going to share my screen. I got a little presentation for you all, and we will jump into it. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Fundraising with a Deadline. Excited to talk to you all. Going to jump into the presentation. I'm going to share a little bit about myself and then I'm going to orient you into the space so you can see what we're going to discuss. First and foremost, so we're not strangers here. My name is Niels Ribeiro Yamofio. I have been a nonprofit leader for many years, well over I know it says 15 on screen. It's been well over 18 years, and I've done a little bit of everything from being a AmeriCorps volunteer to being an executive director. And I've taken all these years and consolidated my experience into a venture called V2R. V2R is a community and resource hub for social impact and nonprofit leaders. And this is our webinar series where we have real conversations about everyday challenges leaders like you face. And how fitting for this part of the series to be about fundraising. Because I know as a nonprofit leader, as a social impact leader, you're dealing with money in some way, shape, or form. And more than likely, fundraising is an issue. So we're not just talking about fundraising, we're talking about fundraising with a deadline. And what to do when it feels like the time is running out, the shot clock is going down, and the money still needs to get in. So we will absolutely talk about what to do and how to do it. Some quick housekeeping things. If you have questions, feel free to drop them into the chat. We will have some time at the end to go over your questions. But really, this is an opportunity for me to share a few tips and trades that you can use in your nonprofit journey. And then, of course, we'll take some time to answer questions that you have. So before we jump in, think about a time a deadline did not stress you out. Like when you got the deadline, you said, I got this. Think about the last time you experienced that. As you're thinking, I'll tell you about mine in particular. This isn't the last time. This is just the one that I remember the clearest. And that was, it was my senior year in college and we got a 10-page paper assignment. And for the first and possibly only time in my college experience, I was like, psh, I got this. I know exactly what to write. I know when I'm going to have the time to write it. I even know where I'm going to write this paper. And I have the date scheduled for when I'm going to write it. I'm going to knock this thing out. That is the feeling you want to have when it comes to fundraising all the time. You want to feel like, I got this. I know exactly what to do. I know who to ask. I know how much I'm going to ask, and I'm going to get it all done by the time I need to get it done. So the goal is for you to feel that way, ideally about everything, but in particular about fundraising. You may not feel like that right now, but the hope is you will feel like you got this when it comes to fundraising. But I do want to name some things. You're probably stressed. If we're talking about two important things, which is fundraising and deadlines, it comes with stress, right? You might feel stressed. You might feel not clear-headed. You're feeling like you're behind. You might even be panicking. Uh, there's there's an important thing that you should know. One, that is fine. It's absolutely okay to feel stressed, all right? It's absolutely okay that you may not be in a place of peace and joy and happiness when it comes to fundraising with a deadline. It's okay. Don't beat yourself up. I promise you, you're not the only person feeling like that. There's a bunch of people out here, even when it's not fundraising with a deadline. When I say fundraising, there's people who are going through a traumatic experience right now because of just the nature of asking for money, let alone deadlines, where I know a lot of us, especially those of us who like to wait to the last minute to do things, we either get joy or fear when it comes to deadlines. So when the two things come together, for a lot of us, there's a natural reaction of stress and fear. I'm telling you, it is okay for you to feel like that. But the hope is you don't stay feeling like that. The goal is to get you to move past it. And I'm going to share some of the chips and trades to get you there. There's an important question to ask, though, when we talk about this particular situation. And that is, how much do you need to raise, and by when? If you are in this kind of situation where there's a certain amount of money you need to raise by a certain amount of time, more than likely, I'm assuming something bad happened. A funder said they were going to give you a certain amount of money and they didn't give it to you. There was a grant that you just knew you were going to get and you didn't get. Somebody went MIA, somebody quit or got fired and dropped the ball, and it put you in a bad situation. A board member didn't do some of the things that they should have done as a board member. Usually something happened and it puts you in a situation where now you have to raise a significant amount of money in a short amount of time. So the question that I'll ask is how much do you need to raise and by when? The first thing that we're going to do is do something I call an oh, look at that person. The first thing we're going to do is do something I call an organizational audit, specifically when it comes to fundraising. The first thing that we're talking about is the gap. Now, I just asked you, how much do you need to raise and by when? A lot of you are thinking about your fundraising goal. So, for example, you could have a $200,000 fundraising goal. And so you're thinking about, all right, I raised $150,000. My gap is $50,000. I did not ask how much you need to raise in regards to your fundraising goal. I asked how much does your organization need to raise? How much do you need to keep the lights running for the rest of the fiscal year? That's the actual gap that we're talking about. So maybe your fundraising goal is 200,000, but the operating cost for your organization could be $180,000 and you've already raised 150. So instead of the gap being 50,000, the gap's actually really 20,000, 20 or 30,000, give or take. Like however much you need in order to operate the business. That's the actual gap that we're talking about here. So that's number one. Really understand what your gap is and understand how much time you got in order to fundraise it. For some of you, it's the end of the fiscal year. So you got maybe a month, maybe 2 months, give or take. For some of you, it's the calendar year. So you got 6 months, 7 months, 8 months to plan for it. But really just understand how much you need to raise and when you need to raise it by. So that's number one. Two, this is not going to be a popular one, but it's an important one, which is do you have a healthy reserve? The money that the in times when the year was good, you've built up reserves and you have maybe 30 days of operating cash on hand, maybe 90 days operating cash on hand. Hopefully you have some type of reserve. If you do have a reserve, the first thing I suggest is instead of you scrambling to raise a lot of money in a short amount of time, maybe dip into your reserves, take care of this fiscal year, and focus all your attention into making sure you can reach your fundraising goal for next fiscal year. And part of the reason I say that is this. Funders typically do not like to fund an organization where they have to keep the lights on. Usually they want to fund healthy organizations. They want their investment to go into something that is thriving, that is great, that is going to be successful and succeed and lead to awesome impact versus funding something that may or may not exist in the next 6 months. You can tell when it comes to funders, they really want to put their money in places where they know it's going to be successful and grow and thrive. So it's going to be a really hard pitch for your funders to hear that you have to raise X amount of money by X time. They're not going to find that really attractive. So the hope is ideally you have reserves. You can fund whatever the gap is during that window, and then you focus all your attention into talking with funders where you're saying, "Hey, we're great, we're thriving, we're actually fundraising for next year, so let's talk about X, Y, and Z, and we can circle back in a couple months." That is the best position to be in when you're fundraising a year in the future, 2 years in the future, 5 years in the future. Like that is the best place to be. So that's two reserves. I'm assuming if you're in this situation, a lot of you already thought about your reserves and you're like, yeah, Niels, that's awesome. Great. Let's move on to the next thing because I'm struggling right now. I ain't really got it. My reserve's $5. Okay, cool. Fine. I understand. The third thing that we'll talk about then is your board. Out of any of the funders that we will talk about, there's one group of funders who actually can hear how intense your situation is, who can feel the urgency that you have, and that is your board. Your board is a dedicated group of volunteers who have already leveraged their time, talent, and treasure to see your organization thrive. So they can and should hear when things are really tight. They should hear why. And they should be the first ones to put their hat in to either give the funds or to reach out to folks to support you in reading your fund and reaching your fundraising goals. So absolutely board's going to be on the list. How are you activating them? How are you leveraging their network, their resources to support you because they're already invested and bought in, right? Like you can leverage that relationship to help meet the goals because that's what they signed up for as a board member. Then there's number four, your current donors and your network. So you already looked at your reserves. You already talked to your board. Now you're going to talk to your current donors. Your current donors already are invested in you. They may know some of the things that you're experiencing. They may have already talked to some other leaders who are in a similar situation as you. And they could say, hey, actually, we got an extra $20,000 that we can give you. Or we know these two or three different pools of money that you might have access to. I know a friend down the street who's thinking about starting a foundation. They may want to give you something. You never know when it comes to donors. But your current donors are folks that have already invested in your organization, already believe in the impact that you can do, and already want to see you thrive because they've already invested in you. So, when in doubt, it's good to leverage those relationships and engage with them. And then there's your network. So you are probably ideally, hopefully already engaged with other social impact leaders who do similar work as you. Yes, of course, you can share tricks and trades, but the reason I bring this up is because if you're going through this situation, I promise you there is another leader in your network who's going through the exact same situation. And you might as well lean on each other to figure out how to get through it. They may know some funds that you can have access to. They may know a particular funder that they can introduce you to. Or they may know a way that you can leverage the resources you have to just work through this window of time so you can get focused on next fiscal year. But you should reach out to them, tell them what's going on, and ideally get their advice. So that's current donors and network. And then last but not least, when you're thinking about your audit, think about the funders in your focus area. So if you are an after school program in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there is a group of funders who give to that particular thing. If you are a charter school in New Orleans, there are particular funders who fund that particular thing. Or if you run a food bank in Washington, D.C., there are particular funders who fund that thing. Your job is to find out who those funders are, find out when their deadlines are, find out if you qualify, and go after the money. Apply for it, make sure the application is stellar, or even at the lowest, make sure you make an introduction so they know who you are, they know what your organization is, they know that you exist, and that you can go from there. But funders who fund in your focus area should absolutely know who you are. And now is a better time than ever when you need the money immediately to reach out to them and to engage with them. We'll spend a little bit more time talking about what you should do in ways that you should engage with those foundations in particular, but that's part of the audit, making sure you look into that. All right. I'm going to talk about a few strategy areas, but before I do that, I'm going to need to explain some terminology that we're going to be using. You probably already heard of some of these things before, so please just entertain me as I articulate what these definitions are. So one is foundation grants. There's different kinds of foundations. There's private foundations, community foundations, corporate foundations, family foundations. Essentially, they are entities that have money and provide grants to organizations that are working towards community impact. Grants are typically an agreement where they award you funds in order for you to do what you said you're going to do within the application. Usually, you have to do 1 to 3 reports throughout a year to share with them the progress towards what you said you were going to fund, what you said you were going to do with the funds. For the most part, there's two types of foundations that we're going to be talking about, or two types of applications in particular that we're going to talk about. There are open applications, and then there's invite only applications. You're going to want to stay away from the invite only applications for this because you're going to have to, in order to get engaged with an invite only, you're going to have to meet a program officer, get in contact with them in some way, shape, or form, maybe an introduction. They're going to have to learn about you. They're going to have to learn about your strategic plan and the things that you want to do, not just in this year, but in the next 5 years or so. Then you're going to have meetings with them. Then you're going to have to eventually show them that they should invest in you. And then they'll finally invite you for an application. If you have a deadline, this is not the time for you to go with that option. It is an amazing option in general in the world of engaging funders for your nonprofit, but specifically for fundraising with the deadline, this is not the one. This is not the one. You want to focus on the open application one because that's the ones that you're going to need to maximize. And we'll talk a little bit about how you should do that later. But foundation grants, that's the first definition that I'll go over. The second one is matching gift campaign. The best way that I can explain it, and I'll go over an example in a little bit, is a donor is going to give you a significant amount of money. Let's say a donor has $10,000 that they are ready and willing to contribute to your organization, but they want to see other people invest in your organization as well. Because again, funders want to fund healthy, thriving organizations. So they say, hey, I got this $10,000, but I'm only going to give it to you if I know other people are going to invest in your organization as well. So that's where a match campaign comes in. Well, they'll say, hey, here's the 10,000. You'll get every dollar that you can match. So the more donors that come in and the more donations that come in by a certain amount of time, if it eventually gets to that 10,000, then that donor will match every dollar that you raise and you could eventually get not just 10,000 but $20,000. It is an amazing technique to engage folks who, one, want to see you thrive, they want to see you win, and they know that their dollar will actually be invested twofolds because for every dollar they give you, they know there's a big old donor who's going to give you that money as well. So instead of it feeling like they're giving you $1, they're really technically giving you $2 because they know someone is matching it. So that's something we're going to talk about again, but matching campaigns are it could be frustrating at times to manage them, but they are technically amazing when you think from the eyes of a funder who wants to give it to you, but they want to see other people invest in you, and that's something that you'll have to leverage in order to get those funds in. We're going to talk about two different strategies on how to fundraise with the deadline. Depending on that question that I asked you early on, where you have, let's say you mentioned that you had there's like $10,000 you need to raise, or there's $100,000 that you need to raise. There are two ways that you can go. There's technically maybe 7, 8 different ways, but I'm going to talk to you today about two particular ways you can engage those gaps. One is through working with individuals, which is what we're going to call the smaller gap. And the other is working through foundations, which we'll call the larger gap. And I'll tell you why we're going to do that as we go on. So if you have a smaller gap, we're talking around $20,000 or less, depending on the size of your organization and your ability to engage with the network. My suggestion is completely focus on individuals. Individuals are quick to be able to, one, understand the organization and ideally write a check. And it means that you can bring those funds in. It's not going to be substantially large compared to foundations, depending on the individuals that you're talking with. But it's a great way to get folks acclimated to your organization, get them engaged, and invest in you quickly and immediately. So, how that goes is there's two things. One is the match giving campaign that I was just talking to you about. Campaigns in general are a great way to get folks galvanized and engaged to come in. Essentially, you're saying, hey, y'all, in the next 3 months, we have to raise, insert what your gap is. So let's say for this example, it's $10,000. Hey, y'all, in the next 3 months, we have to raise $10,000. We have a donor that will give us $5,000. So if you all can help us raise another $5,000, we will reach our goal. Do you know how easy it is to believe in that? Like, if you're telling me all I got to do is help you get $5,000, someone else is going to write another $5,000 and then the gap is gone. Yeah. And I care about your organization. Like, yeah, I'll give you $25 for that. Yeah, I'll give you $50 for that. And then just imagine as those gift comes in and you're seeing a tracker go up, all of a sudden the gap is gone. So that is one of the ways to do it. The best way to kick off a match gift campaign is to get your board on board. Tell them they have to tell everybody, their friends, their family, people that are their family that they don't feel comfortable claiming as their family, they got to tell them too. Everybody. Everybody needs to know about the match kit campaign. So you should help them with words that they could put on social media. They need to put it out there and they need to tell everybody. And guess what? So do you. You have to tell your friends. You have to tell your family. You have to donate some of your money as well if you haven't already, because folks are going to want to get involved in things that their friends and their family are engaged with. They may or may not know about your organization or even care about your organization, but they care about you. And if you believe in it so much so that you're willing to put it on social media, so much so that you're willing to donate towards it, then that might convince them to do that as well. So the name of the game is to have your board put it out there, have yourself put it out there, and anybody else that care about you or this organization, they need to put it out there too, because the more the merrier, and ideally those funds will come in. So that's the match gift campaign. And the other one is events. Now I know what you're thinking. I even wrote it on the slide. $10,000 for like an event. I've gone to events that raise $100,000 that night. Yes, I know. So have I. But that's what they do. If you ever gone to a nonprofit organization who has an event and that event is bringing in six figures and even seven figures, that's something they do all the time. They are professional events folks. Like, they have built that into their annual revenue. They know exactly what to do in an event. And usually they're putting in a lot of money in the event because they know the return is going to be tremendous. So that's not the situation more than likely that you're in. This is an event that you were not planning for. This is an event that's going to need to happen in a short amount of time. And this is an event that you're usually probably more than likely going to engage with a network that you already know. So more than likely, it's not going to go the way that nonprofits that have been preparing for years in advance to have them be as successful as they are. It's not going to look like that. More than likely, how this event will look is you're going to tell your board this is something that you need to do. They're going to suggest, hey, let's have it at this location, whether it is a restaurant, whether it is a event space, and they're going to reach out to their close friends and family and folks who support the things that they support, and they're going to come to that event knowing that they got to give money. And it is a let's see the name of your organization thrive in 2027. And it's like, hey y'all, we're coming in and the goal is tonight to raise this $10,000. That is what the goal is tonight. So please come in, buy these t-shirts, buy this food, and bring the money in. And even depending on where you have the event, let's say it is at a restaurant and you beg the restaurant to support, they'll say, great, have folks buy drinks and food, and we're going to give 20% of our revenue that we raise during this window to your organization. These are all ways that you can leverage an event to fund towards your gap. Usually these events are small. Usually these events are intimate. So the focus is on like how are you engaging your board to really get excited about the event, to reach out to folks to come and to ideally support it. Now, you've heard me talk about the individual giving and the campaigns as one of the options for the small gap. And you may be like, Nils, does this work? And the answer is yes. Yes, it does work. I'll give you an example. So early in my career, I was on my one of my first nonprofit boards, and there was an organization that had about a $5,000 gap, and the CEO was stuck. They were more focused on the stress of the situation than troubleshooting how to fix the situation that they're in. In case you're wondering, someone said they were going to give money and they didn't give any money. And so now the organization was stuck and they needed to raise a significant amount of money in like the next 2 months or so. So we got the board together, and one of the board members mentioned that they hadn't given their annual gift yet, and their annual gift at the time was $1,500. And they asked like how if that can support in any way. Obviously, it could decrease the gap, but like, is there anything else we could do with this particular funds that they were ready and able to give, and they just hadn't given it yet? And so the before the CEO would say like, yes, I need that now, and I need to do it so I can tell everybody that the gap is actually smaller. I was like, hold on, maybe we can use this as a, you guessed it, match gift campaign. And so I suggested it, and the board was on board. And so we reached out to donors and supporters and said, hey, if you donate by a certain date, a donor will match up to $1,500. 2 months later, when we wrapped up the campaign, the organization raised over $10,000. So I promise you, when I say match gift campaigns work, I'm not only a member, I'm a client. Match gift campaigns work. I have seen it firsthand and experienced it, and it helped that organization thrive, and they still exist to this day. So that's if you have a small gap. But some of you are dealing with a larger gap. And while you can use this technique, you probably need something more substantial because there's a lot of money that you need to raise in a short amount of time. And this is where foundations make the most sense to engage with. Now, I've already talked about the fact that you need to focus on foundations within your focus area. I also talked about the fact that you need to focus on foundations that have open applications. So you know those two things already. The third thing that I didn't talk about yet that you need to do is apply to as many of them as possible. This is a numbers game. You got to apply to a bunch of them. And here's why. Because this is also the most competitive way to bring in money in the social impact world in general. Because it's open application. That means if you're looking at it, so is a bunch of other people. And while you are applying for this, so are a bunch of other people as well. And while you may fit in this focus area, you have amazing impact. You have done all the things that they asked for and all that stuff. So is other people. And so you are left into just assuming and hoping that they pick you out of one of the many organizations that they're dealing with. Just to kind of like help further understand this, let's say a foundation has $100,000 that they're going to give out. So they're going to give out five $20,000 grants, and you applied. Let's say 500 nonprofit organizations applied for that, and they're only going to award five. That's a really small percentage. And I'm sure of those 500 nonprofits, a lot of them are great nonprofit organizations. You see what I'm saying? The number games are really treacherous in the world of foundations. So your job is to apply to as many of them as possible. And then, of course, you got to leverage the relationships that you have. So if you've already gotten money from a foundation, are you reaching out to the other foundations to engage with them to see, hey, do you know somebody who can connect with us so we can have a conversation before I just get this code application? So that is how you do it. And an example of that is another story I have for you. So I worked for an organization that applied for a grant and didn't get it. But I stayed in close contact with that program officer because they were like, I really like your organization. I was like, well, thank you. Let's chat more. Why do you like the organization? And we stayed very friendly for years. I circled back in later on and shared with them that we were about $50,000 short of our fundraising goal, and asked if there were any invitations or like, hey, introductions that they could make for me to other folks in the philanthropic world to help us close the gap. Well, the program officer was like, if that's the case, I have $10,000 that we can give to your organization, no strings attached. We just have this money that was ready, and we were trying to figure out what to do, but we will absolutely award your organization this $10,000. And there's about two people I'm going to introduce you to that I think would be a good fit for what they're looking for and what you do. One of them is a family foundation. The other one's another private foundation. And so one person didn't respond, but that family foundation did respond to that introduction. And they gave us that extra 40,000, eventually gave us that other $40,000. So we closed that fundraising goal. But here's the kicker. That family foundation that we engaged with, I'm pretty sure they continue. Well, I know for a fact they continue to fundraise or give money to the nonprofit that I was working at for years. And even after I left, I believe they still give to that nonprofit to this day. So the power of relationships really helped us not just close that gap, but find new supporters for our organization and ideally continue to help us thrive for years to come. So, yes, engaging with foundations when you have a large amount of money, it does work, but it is a numbers game. You got to apply a lot. As we start to wrap up, there's a couple of themes that you more than likely have noticed in this webinar series, in this webinar presentation, and that is relationships. Whether it is I was talking about the board, whether I was talking about your funders, your colleagues in the world of social impact, even the foundation folks. In every single one of those are relationships that you are leveraging to solve a problem that you're facing. You're going to have to do that. In general, you're going to have to manage or engage with your relationships. The best fundraisers just so happen to be the best at relationship management because that's what fundraising is. It is a relationship. You're getting a chance to get to know somebody. They're getting a chance to get to know you and the organization that you run. And if y'all like each other, they're going to fund you, right? And they're going to continue to invest in you because they like you and they like the work that you do. It's all about relationships. So even if you're fundraising with a deadline, all it means is you're going to lean into the relationships that you have that are strong to support you on any problems that you have. It just so happens that this particular problem that we're talking about is a fundraising gap with a deadline. At the end of the day, you still have to leverage the relationships that you have. So, leverage your relationships. The thought process on how you do that is do the audit. We just talked about it. It was a couple slides ago. Do the audit. Two, pick your lane. You can do the individuals or the foundation. And three, when in doubt, all the things that you have to do, you have to lean in on those relationships. And with that, y'all, we will be going into Q&A very soon. I think I see a chat. This is how I try to work on my Zoom skills. Okay, I see questions are coming up. Let me first before we jump into Q&A, if you liked this conversation, one, we will share the recap in a couple of days. Funny enough, some of you are watching the recap right now. Hello. In a couple of days, you'll see in your email a recap episode of this webinar or recap playing of this episode. So feel free to review. But if you really enjoyed this conversation and would love to have more of these conversations, we do have a community. It is called Vision Builders. It's a community where we go deeper into challenges that you all are facing every day, and we talk through what those solutions are. So if you're interested, please go to our website, www.v2r.me, and you can see more, not just about our community, but about all the things that we do here at V2R. You also see my email, niels at v2r.me, in case you ever want to get in contact. Either myself or someone in my team will reach back out to you, and we can definitely chat through what challenges you may have and things that you are facing. We offer free 15-minute Q&A sessions that if you are interested in, just feel free to go to our website and we can share more. And with that, we will now move into Q&A. I am going to stop sharing my screen and I am going to spotlight myself and let's jump into your questions. All right. One question is, how can I show that my organization is healthy and thriving to be competitive for organizations and people who want to donate? It's a great question. It depends on who you're talking to and what they want to pay attention to. More than likely, one thing that everyone looks at when they want to see if an organization is healthy and thriving is, of course, they're going to look at your 990. They're going to see how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. Usually, a signs for a healthy organization is there is more money coming in than going out. And specifically and in particular, they are looking to see how robust is your reserves. The more reserves you have, the more healthy an organization can be perceived to be. But if your reserves are through the roof, if they're huge, then depending on what kind of organization you are, funders may question, well, why do you need any money if you have $1 trillion in your reserves? Right? It's like, why don't you just dip into your reserves and instead of hoarding this money that is meant to help other people, use that money to help other people instead of just trying to bring in more money. And the reason I say is depending on the organization is because some organizations have endowments, and the endowments are meant to be funds that are being invested in that the returns on the investment actually help the organization. So it depends. But when in doubt, what people want to see is that money is coming in, more money is coming in than going out. And in particular, the best way to show that is tell them who is funding you and how much they're giving. That's actually for a lot of foundations. That's the question that they ask in their application is who else is funding you? Like name your top five biggest funders, and how much they're giving. So it shows you that they're not the only ones funding you because that's the big fear that they have. They don't want to be the only ones keeping your organization alive and thriving. So, all right. And then another question we have is, what do you think about partnering with restaurants like Chipotle to raise funds? That is a great question. You may have heard in one of the examples that I had for the small events that you can do in the smaller path is partnering with a restaurant. I think depending on the size of your organization, it is a smart play to go. Like, I think one of the first times I ever did a fundraising event, it was at a Quiznos, and no, it was Firehouse Subs. It was a Firehouse Subs in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Shout out to the Tar Heels. And so we did a fundraising event there, and they said that they would give a portion of the revenue that they raised. I think around 10% would go to the organization I was raising money for. So here's the good news and the bad news. The good news is like, yeah, you can raise some money by just having folks come to the restaurant. The restaurant wins because you're bringing in customers for them. So they're getting something out of it. The more you advertise that, like, hey, we're doing a event at this restaurant, come in and spend money, the restaurant is going to win because those are potentially some customers that they weren't planning to have, and you're doing the advertisement for them. So they absolutely win in this situation. And depending on how much money they get that night, you will win in that situation. But you have to put the time and energy to tell people to show up. And so, really, it's a test of will people show up for your organization? Will they show up to spend money at this restaurant that they may or may not have planned to spend money at to support your organization? So, in case you weren't reading between the lines, it takes work, right? You got to put in some work to get people to show up there. The example that I did at Firehouse Subs in Chapel Hill, I think three people showed up. The restaurant felt bad for us, and they just gave us $200 because they're like, sorry. So it takes work, and it's not guaranteed funds. You still have to do a lot of the advertisement and encouraging people to go there. All right. I do not see any more questions. And so with that, I am going to stop the recording and send you all on your way. Thank you all. Let me stop here. Take care.